Okay, so in your class kit, you will have a printable PDF for Copics 101, your basic blending. And you can print this out on a Nina cardstock. And I would suggest, if you've never used Copics with your printer before, test your ink with the printer before you move on. And that's basically just to make sure that it's compatible and doesn't bleed. Take a marker and just set it right next to the line and let it soak through the paper and let it soak through your printed line. If your printed line stays intact, then your printer is okay to use with the Copics. If it bleeds, then you can't use your printer. You'll have to use stamped images. So we're going to go ahead and start with this. And your basic blending, when you start out, you want to pick 2 or 3 colors that this is for a monochromatic color blend, that we want the whole image to be the same color, in this case purple, and we want it to be from light to dark. So basically how you choose your colors is you start with the same letter, which in this case is a V, which is violet, and then you start with your first number, and your first numbers are all going to be the same, and then your second numbers are all going to be 2 to 3 digits apart. So here in this instant I have V12, V15, and V17. And we're going to learn 2 different blending techniques here. And the first one is going to be using a smooth blending or a wet blending technique. And this is probably the more popular technique or more popular way of coloring. And what you're going to do is start with your lightest color. Your lightest color is going to be your lowest number. So in this case it's going to be V12. And on your markers, your gray strip is going to be your sketch tip. Your other end is a chisel. We're going to use the sketch tip. And what you're going to do is do circular motions, and you're going to color in the entire circle. And in this point, you're not worrying about staying in the lines. Just go ahead and color. But you want to use circular motions. And you want to use the full tip of your marker. I'm not using just the very tip of it and lightly pressing. You want to go ahead and give it some pressure and color in circular motions. You want to saturate that paper. And when you're working in circles like this, you're saturating your paper nicely. And if you turn it over, you'll see it soaked through. That means you're getting a good saturation of that color. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your middle number, or your middle color, this is the V15, and you're going to start over on one side. And since I've got 3 colors, I'm going to divide my image into thirds. So this is 1/3, and then this color is going to be 2/3. And you want to just press your marker tip down at the edge and swipe over about 2/3 of the way. And as I'm coming up on the other side, I am pulling up. So I'm getting a softer brush stroke at the other side. Okay, now I'm going to go in with my third color, the V17, and this is my last color, so I'm going to go in 1/3 of the way. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start over on the same side, and we're going to pull it out to the middle with a sweeping motion and picking up the marker as it gets to the middle to soften that line. Then you're going to go back with your V15 and you're going to pull out your color. And that's just going to blend that color. Now if you have a strong line over here, you can go back in with your lightest, this is the V12, and kind of go back over to where you mix that line and blend your colors. So now we have a nice smooth gradient from dark to light. Okay? So that is wet blending. Okay, this time what we're going to do is we're going to do a dry blending. And this is a more defined blending. You can see more lines through this one, and you can see more of the shading. And this time we're actually going to start with your darkest color, which is going to be your V17. And you're going to flick it or sweep it a third of the way, just the same way as we did over here. But we're going to start with the darkest, so you're only going to go in with a third of the way. Another thing I suggest is when you're coloring and you're flicking, turn your cardstock so that it is comfortable for your arm to flick. If you're contorting your arm, you're not going to get the right flicking motion with your wrist, and it's going to be difficult. So go ahead and position your cardstock to where it's going to be comfortable for you to flick. And then we're just going to go ahead and flick, and we're going about a third of the way again. And you can see that the ink gets lighter as I get to the end. Okay? Then I'm going to go in with my next color, which is V15. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to bring it out a little bit more. And you can see as I'm doing that, it's pulling the color right out from the other one and blending it. Okay? And then I'm going to take my lightest color, which is my V12, and this time I'm going to go in from the opposite direction, and I'm going to brush into that darker area with the same flicking or sweeping motion where I'm doing a softer color in the middle. Okay, so see here we have the blending, but you can see more sketches in the color blending. And sometimes you just want more texture. That's why you would go ahead and pick this way of coloring. If you're coloring an animal with some fur, you might choose to do this one because it gives you a little bit more texture. Or hair. If you want smooth coloring, if you're coloring a dress or, I don't know, something solid, a teacup or something, you would want smooth lines, so you would use your wet blending. But now we're going to put this into practice. And on your printout, you will have the flowers print out here as well. I don't have that on mine, so I have them printed out here. And we're going to do one with the wet blending and one with the dry blending. So let's start with the wet blending. So we're going to start with our lightest color, our V12. We're going to color in all of our flower because we want it all purple. You're going to use circular motions. And with this middle part, one of the nice things about Copics is you can blend your colors and change your color right over it. And since this is just such a light color, I just went ahead and I colored over the whole middle part. Okay, now we're going to start adding our shading. So we're going to go to our middle color. And remember, we're working in thirds. And we're going to work in thirds as far as each section. And you're going to look at the flower, and I see the sun pretty much coming straight down onto the flower. So the middle section is going to have the highlights of the sun. So it's going to be the lightest section. So we're going to go around and start at your line that's going to have your deepest shadow, and you're going to pull out your color. And again, move your cardstock so that it's comfortable for you. Okay, and we're going to do that on each section. And if a petal sits behind another petal, it's going to be darker. Like on this one, it's going to be darker where it sits behind it. And sometimes you can use the lines that the artist draws. And this is also, this is an image from Becky Muir, and it is in your kit as well, so you can print it and just practice coloring it as much as you need to. And at the bottom here, just remember, you're going to have to practice your flicking more than likely. That's a harder technique to get down for a lot of people. Just practice your flicking. Practice just putting your marker down and flicking it up so that you get a solid line at the beginning, but then soft edges towards the end. Okay? And it's going to be darker under there. Okay, so I've got my first two colors down. Now I need to go in with my darkest, my V17, and I'm just going to use a little bit of this and not really do too much flicking since this is such a small image. I'm just going around and kind of tracing where my darkest spots are going to be. This back petal, where it's behind everything. Wherever your darkest shadows are going to be is where you want to pull the V17. Okay, then I'm going to go back in with my middle color, and I'm going to kind of just go over those lines a little bit, pulling out the color just a little bit more. I didn't do any of that section. back here. And okay, so you just basically want to keep working with these same techniques, blending your colors until you're satisfied with what you have. And again, your lightest color is going to blend that out and blend all your shading. Okay, so now if I see, say I want it a little bit more, let's see, highlighting up in here, I can actually go back in and just keep adding more of the lightest color, and it's going to lighten that whole section. Same thing with this one. If you want that middle section really bright, just keep going over it and see how it lightens that. Okay? So now, I had told you if you get out of the lines, there's a couple of ways that you can fix that. One way is to take the colorless blender, which really isn't a blender pen, it's more of a correction pen. And this is, I'm going to use the chisel end, and it's actually going to move ink. So I'm going to start outside the line, and I'm going to push in to the line where I got out of the line. And you can see that it just pushes that color right back into the line. You might need to do that a couple of times. Let your ink dry and then do it again, but it will push that color right back into the line and clean it up for you. I'll show you another way in a minute too, but let's go ahead and do our green now on this. And for the green, I picked G21, 24, and 28. So again, we're going to do the wet blending, so we're starting with the lightest color, and you're just going to put down your lightest color in circular motions. And one thing to keep in mind is if you are coloring and you go out of the lines, like on the flower, if it was right here by the leaf, you don't have to worry about that, because when you're coloring it with the green, it's going to correct it and you're not going to notice it. So that's one way, another way of correcting it. If you get out of the lines on a different side that you're going to color, don't worry about it, because you'll be able to fix that. But up at the very top of the flower, that just needed a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of fixing. Okay. Now we're going to go in with our middle color. And I always like to do from the flower out to the middle. I always do one side of the flower a little bit darker. And again, think of your thirds. So the darkest, or the middle color is going 2/3 of the way. Turn your paper to flick it so that your hand's not contorting in weird shapes or in weird positions. You can't color right if you're contorting your wrist. So make it convenient for you. And these little notches in the leaves are going to be darker too. Okay, now with my G28, my darkest green. Again, I'm going to go down the center mostly and right up along the flower. Just a little bit out. Not a lot. And then I'm going to just go back to my lightest color and just kind of blend all of that. I'm going to use my circle motions. If I need to pull out some of that color of the dark, you can just kind of like flick over it too, and it pulls out your color. These markers and inks are so versatile, and you can just blend and work with them in so many different ways. Once you get the hang of the coloring with them and the blending, it's just fabulous. You'll never want to go back to those water-based markers again. Just pulling out my color. And see, my green is getting a little bit dry there. I'm going to have to refill this one. Okay, so there is my flower, and like I said, we need to color the stamens in the middle. I'm going to go with Y17, and this is the beauty of the Copics. Even though that's purple, you can go right over it and you can see the yellow. And here I'm just kind of dotting it because there's a bunch of little spots there in the middle. But see, can you see the spotting of it? Okay, and see the dimension of the flower. You can see the depth of the petals and the dimension in there. Another way to fix your going out of the lines, I'm going to go up here and add a little bit more of the blender pen. But if I had some that was down underneath here, another way to create dimension and to cover up some little boo-boos is with your grays. And I am using, the purple is a cool color, so I am going to use my cool grays. This is C3 and CO. And I'm going to start, since my light is coming down on the top, underneath you're going to have a little bit of a shadow. So I'm not going all the way up the side, but I'm going on the bottom sides. And then up a little bit. And normally I will pick a side as well. I'm going to pick the left side as my shadow. Since it's darker over here, I'm going to go ahead and shade the left side as well. Not all of it. I'm not doing up here because that's the top. And you can do some of the left side up here, just a little bit, not a lot. And the same thing here, just a little bit. And then what you want to do is go back in. I started with the C3. Go back in with the lighter gray